Now on Denver 7 News at 4, it's amazing what you can do when you work together.
The small community here is amazing.
The life-changing outcome of a Colorado town's generosity.
You might think extremists recruit on places like the dark web, but video games are actually where some of them are doing it now. We'll take a look at the role that tech companies and parents could play to reduce this, and how new state guidelines could provide some relief from rising utility bills.
And there's a new safe place for some of Denver's unhoused to call home, but this time next year, they'll likely be moving again. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Shannon Ogden. And a new safe outdoor space is open in Denver. It's designed to get the homeless into stable housing, and the first residents moved in just a few hours ago. This is near 2nd and Federal. Denver 7's Russell Haythorne was there.
Yeah, the gate is open to Denver's newest safe outdoor space. This one sits along Federal Boulevard in the Barnum neighborhood, which is about a mile south of Empower Field at Mile High. And the idea here is to reduce the impact of camping in this neighborhood while also giving people a place to go who might otherwise be camped out in bus stops or on benches, on street corners, and elsewhere. Eventually, within a year, there's an even bigger, bolder plan for this site as well.
What's really cool about this particular site is that this site is going to be developed into future affordable housing by the St. Francis Center. So we are in essence really utilizing this land before it would normally be utilized.
We are planning, once this SOS site has been up for a year, we are planning on moving that SOS site elsewhere, and we will be developing senior housing on that same patch of land.
That was Andrew Spinks with the St. Francis Center. He says this permanent housing solution would give seniors stability in their, quote, golden years. In Denver, Russell Haythorne, Denver 7.
Cost of living is on the minds of most Coloradans right now. This is according to a new Pulse poll from the Colorado Health Foundation. This survey shows these things keep people up all night long. Mental health, wildfire, healthcare costs, and crime. But you can see on the top of the list here, nearly all, this is 98% of Coloradans, can agree the rising cost of living is a big concern.
We do see a real difference in folks' lived experience with how they're coping with that increased cost of living in our state, where lower income households in our state are having to make really difficult trade-off decisions to make ends meet in Colorado now.
Nearly half of Coloradans, this is 43%, say they're worse off financially right now than they were a year ago. Now, in September, Denver 7 told you about an Englewood resident and his concerns about the city's plan to install a 5G tower in the front of his home. Well, it turns out the city decided not to install it there. Instead, they chose a home a few doors down. This is a Lindy Henn's home, and that white surface is what appeared in front of her home last week. After multiple calls to the city, well, Hines learned that a big 5G tower will be installed in front of her home. She says neither the city nor the contractor notified them ahead of time, and now her husband are seriously concerned.
They're trying very hard not to mention the fact that it's a 5G tower, but it is. And ultimately, you know, we are concerned. This is our first home. This is our asset. This is our investment. We're concerned that the stigma attached to having a 5G cell tower in our front yard, extremely close to our home, is going to lower our property value.
And coming up at 6 o'clock, the impact a real estate agent thinks this move will have on this property and why neighbors also are concerned.
A plan to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug costs is moving forward in Congress. Senate Democrats just reached a tentative agreement around this. It would also cap Medicare recipients' yearly out-of-pocket costs at $2,000. Under the new plan, newer drugs would not be eligible to have prices negotiated. That could be an issue with how much the prices for drugs have been going up. That's according to the Journal of the American Medical Association. It found that prices for new drugs went up by 11% per year from 2008 to 2021, and that's after taking inflation into account. The new types of more complex medications being introduced and rebates that manufacturers give to drug makers.
So we found that the prices increased across the board for all different kinds of drugs. And that includes drugs for cancer, for other conditions, drugs that treat rare diseases, or drugs that treat more common diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure. So we saw increases across the board.
The pharmaceutical industry is pointing to a Congressional Budget Office estimate that lowering drug prices might lead to fewer new drugs over the next several decades. Others who study the healthcare industry think making rebates work better rather than price controls is the answer.
There's a tremendous amount of rebates in the system, but yet the higher the rebates are, the more out-of-pocket costs get shifted to the consumer.
The FTC is currently looking into this. If your copay seems like a lot, ask the pharmacist what the cost would be if you paid out of pocket, because sometimes it can actually be less. Also, you can ask if there is a cheaper alternative available. The newsfeed starts with pharmacists now allowed to prescribe Paxlovid. That's the pill that helps treat those already with COVID-19. The FDA says by allowing pharmacists to give this pill, more people will have easier access to it. A cancer drug could be the key in helping high-risk COVID-19 patients. Drug maker Veru applied for emergency use authorization. Studies show that this drug they produce can help those with COVID who are at high risk of severe disease. When was the last time you actually had to show proof of vaccination to get into a restaurant or any kind of place? Well, in China, the government is now requiring it to enter public spaces. Not many places in the US still have those requirements outside of some hospitals and medical facilities. Now, monkeypox cases have gone up about 80% over the past few weeks. That's according to the World Health Organization. Globally, the agency reports 6,000 cases. US makes up about 600 of those. LabCorp says it will start offering testing for the virus. CDC says this will make it more accessible by allowing providers to test patients. Interest rate hikes are not over yet. That is what a new update from the Federal Reserve is saying, why experts tell us that the hikes aren't guaranteed to solve the inflation problem.
It's a wild ride at altitude. We're going to break down what makes Colorado's newest roller coaster stand out. That's when Denver 7 News at 4 returns.